In the days following the shooting, investigators worked to understand the relationship between Pastor Brodes Perry and Latoshia Daniels. What they discovered transformed the case from a straightforward murder investigation into a story filled with secrets, conflicting accounts, and emotional betrayal. According to evidence presented in court, Daniels and Perry had been involved in a romantic relationship that lasted for several years. Their connection reportedly began when Daniels sought spiritual guidance during a difficult period in her life. Perry, serving as both mentor and pastor, became someone she trusted deeply. Over time, that relationship allegedly evolved into something far more personal. Daniels later claimed that Perry assured her their relationship was not a secret. According to her account, he repeatedly told her that his wife knew about the relationship and accepted it. Daniels believed she was participating in what Perry described as an honest arrangement. She claimed he spoke openly about non-traditional relationships and convinced her that everyone involved understood the situation. But when investigators spoke with Perry's wife, they heard a completely different story. She testified that she had no knowledge of any romantic relationship between her husband and Daniels. She denied ever agreeing to an open marriage and said she was completely unaware of the affair. Suddenly, two very different versions of reality emerged. One version suggested Daniels had been led to believe she was part of an accepted relationship. The other suggested she had been deceived by a man living a double life. AS detectives reviewed years of messages and communications. They began uncovering evidence that pointed toward a complicated emotional history between the pair. Prosecutors believed the relationship eventually deteriorated, leaving Daniels devastated and searching for answers. But the defense argued there was much more to the story. Then investigators uncovered private videos recorded by Brodes Perry himself, and those recordings would become some of the most controversial evidence presented during the trial. As the trial unfolded, jurors were introduced to evidence that stunned both the courtroom and the public. These were not police recordings or surveillance videos. Instead, they were private videos allegedly recorded by Pastor Brodes Perry himself and shared with Latoshia Daniels during their relationship. The recordings offered a rare glimpse into conversations that had taken place behind closed doors. For many observers, they revealed a side of Perry that was completely different from the public image he had carefully maintained as a respected church leader. In the videos, Perry discussed relationship arrangements that he described as ethical and transparent. He spoke about honesty, communication, and agreements that he claimed existed between all parties involved. According to defense attorneys, the recordings supported Daniels' belief that Perry's wife knew about the relationship. They argued that Daniels was not participating in a secret affair, but in a situation she genuinely believed had been approved. The videos became a central part of the defense strategy. Attorneys argued that Daniels had trusted Perry completely. They claimed she relied on his words and accepted his assurances without realizing that some of those statements might not have been true, but prosecutors viewed the evidence differently. They argued that regardless of what Perry may have said, nothing justified the violent actions that followed. Meanwhile, Perry's widow took the witness stand and firmly rejected the claims made in the recordings. She testified that she never consented to any outside relationship and had no knowledge of Daniels. The contradiction was impossible to ignore. On one side were private videos showing Perry describing a relationship structure that supposedly existed. On the other was sworn testimony insisting that no such arrangement had ever been discussed. As jurors watched the recordings, they were forced to confront a difficult question. Had Daniels been manipulated by someone she trusted, or had she simply chosen to believe what she wanted to hear? As investigators reconstructed the events leading up to the shooting, a clearer picture of that tragic day began to emerge. Yet, even with witness statements and physical evidence, many questions remained unanswered. Prosecutors argued that Daniels traveled from Arkansas to Tennessee with a specific purpose. They believed she was angry about the collapse of her relationship with Perry and wanted a confrontation. The defense offered a different interpretation. According to defense attorneys, Daniels was emotionally devastated and desperate for answers after years of investing herself in a relationship she believed was genuine. Whatever her intentions may have been, everyone agreed on one thing. The encounter inside the apartment quickly became tense. Witnesses described an uncomfortable atmosphere after Perry arrived home. Conversations became strained. Emotions ran high. As the discussion continued, the situation moved toward the apartment entrance. Then everything changed in an instant. Gunshots rang out. Brodes Perry was struck and collapsed. His wife rushed toward him in an attempt to help and was also wounded during the chaos. The violence lasted only moments, but the consequences would last forever. Investigators later examined statements allegedly made during the confrontation. One phrase became especially important during the trial. According to testimony, Daniels expressed feelings of heartbreak and betrayal. Prosecutors argued that these emotions provided a motive for the attack. The defense maintained that the emotional turmoil stemmed from years of manipulation and confusion. Regardless of which interpretation jurors ultimately accepted, the result was undeniable. A respected pastor was dead, a wife was traumatized, and multiple lives had been permanently altered. What began as a hidden relationship had escalated into a tragedy that captured national attention and exposed the dangerous consequences of deception, misplaced trust, and unresolved emotional conflict. Several years after the shooting, the case finally reached a courtroom. What followed was a trial filled with emotional testimony, disturbing evidence, and intense debate over who bore responsibility for the events that unfolded. Prosecutors focused on a simple argument. They claimed Daniels intentionally traveled to confront Brodes Perry and ultimately chose violence. From their perspective, the evidence demonstrated that she acted. After reviewing all the evidence, the jury reached its decision. Daniels was found guilty of second-degree murder. The verdict indicated that jurors believed she was responsible for Perry's death while rejecting the more severe charge of first-degree murder. The conviction brought an end to the legal proceedings, but it did not erase the questions that continued to surround the case. Even after the verdict, many people wondered whether the tragedy had been set in motion long before the shooting itself. The murder of Pastor Brodes Perry remains one of the most talked about true crime cases in recent years, because it was never just about a shooting. It was about secrets, trust, and the collapse of a carefully constructed public image. For years, Perry was known as a respected pastor, mentor, and spiritual leader. To many people, he represented integrity and faith. Few could have imagined that private recordings and courtroom testimony would later reveal allegations of a hidden personal life. AS investigators uncovered evidence after his death. A much more complicated story emerged. The private videos became a symbol of that complexity. They offered a glimpse into conversations and relationships that had remained hidden from public view for years. For some observers, the recordings suggested manipulation and deception. For others, they revealed a woman who genuinely believed she had been told the truth. Regardless of interpretation, the videos fundamentally changed how people viewed the case. What initially appeared to be a straightforward act of violence evolved into a broader discussion about power, trust, emotional vulnerability, and accountability. The tragedy left a trail of devastation. A pastor lost his life. A wife survived a traumatic attack. A woman once connected to the pastor lost her freedom. Families, friends, and church members were left trying to understand how a relationship hidden from public view could end in such a catastrophic way. In the end, the case serves as a reminder that public appearances rarely tell the entire story. Behind closed doors, lives can be far more complicated than they seem. The shocking murder of Pastor Brodes Perry exposed secrets that might never have been discovered otherwise. And even today, the case continues to raise difficult questions about truth, deception, and the consequences that can follow when hidden lives finally come to light. What are your thoughts on this case? Let us know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe for more true crime stories.